The galaxy had known war, yes, but it had long since outgrown the taste of it. For centuries, the Galactic Accord kept peace across star systems with councils, envoys, treaties, and the kind of polished diplomacy that only came after 1,000 years of collective regret. Weapons hadn't been fired in anger for generations. Armies existed more for ceremony than war, and when new species were discovered, they were welcomed, integrated, pacified, educated. That was the plan when they found Earth. I remember that day because I was there. Not just anywhere, on the bridge of the flagship Calthurian, pride of the Valori Federation. The Accord had chosen us, the most neutral and benevolent of all member races, to make first contact with. The humans, I was the communications officer. I spoke 29 languages, held degrees in xenolinguistics and first contact psychology, and I'd been trained to calm, guide, and soothe. We were all so damn proud, so full of ourselves, and then we met them, or rather we saw it, the human warship. It wasn't even trying to hide. Not cloaked, not shielded, it hovered in high orbit over Earth like it belonged there, massive and angular, black as space itself. No decorative lights, no emissary vessels, just a floating monster of steel and silence, bristling with weaponry like something carved from pure hatred. We hailed it repeatedly. No answer. We tried every known frequency, every dialect, even mathematics. Static. Then finally a voice came through, just one male, cold, flat. Human, you've crossed the line. This is your only warning. That was it. No name, no greeting, no protocol, just that dead tone, like we weren't diplomats, like we were pests. We scrambled to translate, thinking maybe it was a threat lost in nuance. Maybe humans were primitive. Maybe they didn't understand galactic law. We were so wrong. High Commander Irath, smug bastard that he was, ordered a show of strength. Warning volley, just plasma bursts across their bow, not even close to hitting the warship. It was standard first contact procedure for lesser species. We didn't know humans had wiped out 3 of their own cities in one war. Just to prove a point, the human ship didn't fire back, not at first. Instead, the voice came again, same coldness, same total lack of emotion. You fired on sovereign Earth space. You will be silenced. Arathian laughed, actually laughed on the bridge. Empty threats, he muttered. They've barely left their solar system. That's when everything changed. In less than 6 seconds, the Calthurian was split in half. I didn't even see the weapon. 1 second, I was standing next to the commander, and the next I was lying on the floor with the bridge lights flickering and alarms screaming. The ship's core was gone. Entire decks vanished. No shields had gone up, no countermeasures triggered. It was like the universe itself had blinked, and half our crew had disappeared with it. Through the smoke and fire, I crawled to my console. The communications board was fried. My ears rang. Blood dripped from my forehead. I could barely hear, but I saw the screen light up again. The human voice returned, still calm, still deadly. The Accord is null. Earth answers to no. Council, we are not your children. If you send another ship, we will burn the stars you came from, and then nothing. No signal, no trace. The warship turned, descended into Earth's atmosphere like a ghost, and vanished behind the clouds. I survived just barely. Emergency pods picked up less than 10% of the crew. We drifted in shock until rescue teams found us orbiting a broken husk of what had once been our finest vessel. The Galactic Council declared it a tragedy. They tried to frame it as a misunderstanding, said the humans must have been startled by our arrival, but I know better. That wasn't fear, it wasn't confusion, that was a message. And the voice that spoke it, that cold, unshaken and human voice, it didn't belong to some savage species, it belonged to a civilization that had made war their religion, and we had interrupted a sermon. The council debrief felt like a dream. Wrapped in a nightmare, they sat me in front of 12 representatives from 12 different species, all dressed in ceremonial robes, all leaning forward, faces etched with controlled curiosity. The air was thick with false empathy. You could tell they weren't here to mourn the dead, they wanted data, information, tactics, weaknesses. My trauma was their opportunity. Hi. Chancellor Vin began with the softest voice imaginable. We know you've been through a traumatic ordeal, but if you could recount in detail what you experienced for the sake of peace. Peace, there was no peace, not anymore. But I spoke anyway because what else was I going to do? I was the last surviving officer from the Calthurian, and whether I liked it or not, I was now the leading expert on human aggression. They didn't hesitate, I said slowly, staring past the council members into some far-off memory. That was the worst part. There was no posturing, no fear, no time. One moment we existed, the next we didn't. The Salari ambassador, an amphibious creature with shimmering skin, tapped her digits on the data table. And their vessel, the Warship, can you describe it in tactical terms? Hull, dimensions, shield output, weapon signature. You don't understand, I muttered. You're looking for something that makes sense. In our terms, that ship, it wasn't built to engage. It was built to end. I don't think they have shields. I don't think they need them. Laughter rippled softly from the Velari section, all fangs and hisses. Impossible, came the snide reply. No species has ever abandoned defense. Completely, it violates all strategic logic. I looked up slowly. They don't use logic the way we do. Humans don't prepare for war, they live inside it. Silence. The room shifted, eyes narrowed. The Andari representative leaned forward. So you're suggesting the species, the humans, intentionally broadcast aggression during first contact? No. I said flatly, I'm saying we made first contact with a predator, and we weren't the hunters. The meeting lasted for hours. They asked about everything. Body language, ship design, communication protocols, even the human voice. I gave them what I could. Most of it was guesswork. None of it satisfied them. Eventually they dismissed me, not with thanks, not with honor, just dismissed. I was escorted out by 2 Varnian security drones like some contaminated artifact. Outside, the galaxy hadn't changed. Shuttles hummed, couriers moved through polished corridors, diplomats smiled and gossiped in alien tongues. But I felt it, the shift, like something sacred had been broken, and no one wanted to admit it. 2 days later, the Accord launched Protocol Echo, a quiet surveillance operation to monitor Earth's solar system without direct interaction. Small stealth-class probes were deployed around the outer edges of Sol. No emissaries, no broadcasts, no presence. Just eyes in the dark, hoping to learn. Without being seen, I wasn't invited to that mission. Didn't matter. 3 weeks Later, all contact with Protocol EC was lost, not jammed, not corrupted. Just gone, no wreckage, no distress. Calls, no sensor trails. It was as if someone had reached into space and plucked them out of existence. After that, fear finally settled in. Real fear, the kind of fear that doesn't make speeches or hold councils, the kind that whispers behind closed doors and moves fleets without authorization. And I was dragged back into it. I received a personal summons to Outpost Theta 6, a black site on the edge of Accord space far from the eyes of the public. When I arrived, I found 6 more survivors like me, men and women from minor skirmishes or classified encounters, all with one thing in common: they had seen what humanity could do. The outpost was cold, brutal, all steel and shadow, no windows, no welcoming protocol, just security checks, retinal scans, and grim-faced officers. A woman named Commander Ryland led the operation, tall, gray-skinned, and not one for ceremony. She got straight to it. You've all been brought here for one reason. You've seen firsthand what the humans are capable of. The Council won't say it out loud, but make no mistake, Earth is now classified as a Tier 1 threat. Murmurs broke out among the group. Tier 1. That label had only been used once in recorded history for the Draxian warlords who nearly consumed 5 systems before being annihilated by a united galactic fleet. But Earth, primitive, isolated, disorganized, or so we thought. Commander Ryland pulled up a 3D schematic. It was grainy footage, low resolution but unmistakable, the same warship that had destroyed the Calthurian, still unnamed, still undetected by any Accord scans until it was too late. She pointed at its core. We believe this is their main reactor, but we can't match the energy signature to anything in our database. It's not fusion, not dark matter, it's something else. Another voice chimed in, an engineer named Draxel. I've studied the structure. It's layered like armor under armor. There are no weak points. And the outer hull, it absorbs heat. Kinetic rounds won't even scratch it. I spoke before I realized I was speaking. They don't build ships the way we do. We build vessels for diplomacy. For war when needed. They build weapons first, then they make them fly. Ryland nodded grimly. We need to understand them. We need a language, a way in. That's why you're here. I felt the blood drain from my face. They weren't giving up on Earth. They were preparing for something worse. Over the next month, we dissected everything we could, intercepted transmissions, visual recordings, even fragments of cultural data pulled from ancient probes that had passed Earth centuries ago. We pieced together human history from scraps. What we found chilled us. Not just the wars, not the global collapses, not the genocides or the nukes or the endless cycle of destruction and rebirth. It was their resilience. Time and time again, humans had brought themselves to the brink of extinction. And every time they clawed their way back, stronger, smarter, angrier. They didn't fear death. They expected it. Some cultures even worshipped it, and through it all they kept building weapons. Commander Ryland once said, they don't build walls to keep threats out. They build missiles to blow threats off the map. She wasn't wrong, but it wasn't just their tech. It was their psychology, their ability to detach, to justify violence. One old transmission we found, a digital archive from an Earth conflict called Vietnam, contained a quote from a human General, we had to destroy the village in order to save it. That line stuck with me. It burned in my skull because that wasn't madness not to them. That was logic. That was human logic. Then came the final nail, an automated probe likely damaged by a solar flare. Crash landed on Mars. Its emergency beacon pinged the Accord before dying completely. Somehow the signal got out. Just a blip on the edge of known space. But it was enough. We picked it up 5 hours later, every monitoring station on the edge of Sol was dark, not just destroyed, overwritten, the logs scrubbed, the satellites gone, the entire network sterilized in a coordinated attack that left no trace. One message remained, burned into the last functioning probe. You were warned, there won't be another. That was the day Outpost Theta 6 went dark. Not from attack, from order. The Council pulled the plug. Every scrap of human data was locked behind top-tier encryption. Research was halted. The official stance returned to denial. They didn't want the truth because the truth was simple. Humanity was not ready to be part of the galaxy, and the galaxy, it wasn't ready for them. But me, I kept my files, I kept the logs, the scans, the comms, the voice. I kept everything. Because deep down I knew the truth. That warship wasn't a freak accident. It wasn't a lone vigilante. It wasn't some rogue AI or warlord acting out of protocol. It was the beginning. It was Earth sending a single clear message to the stars. We see you, we hear you, we don't need you, and I believe them. Because the day we made first contact with a human warship, the galaxy's voice died, not because it was silenced, but because it realized it had nothing left to say. I met Rien on a frozen moon that didn't even have a name. He wasn't a soldier, not anymore. Officially, he'd been stripped of his rank and sent to an outer rim penal colony for insubordination during a classified engagement. Unofficially, he'd been one of the only living beings to see a second human vessel and survive. They called him paranoid, broken, dangerous. I called him essential. It took 5 favors and 2 forged credentials to arrange the meeting. I found him standing alone in the blizzard, scanning the sky with bloodshot eyes like the stars owed him something. His breathing mask hissed with every inhale. The lights of the dome behind us flickering through the ice storm. You came alone, he rasped. His voice was ruined, either from cold or trauma. I wanted the truth, not a committee. He didn't answer, just nodded and gestured to follow. Inside the bunker it was worse. Cold walls, no central heat, no tech past the basics. He didn't live like a man, he lived like a hunted animal. Everything was analog. Even his notes, paper, real paper. I hadn't seen that outside a museum. He sat at a dented metal table and pulled out a file. This is what they didn't let me testify, he said, shoving it forward. I opened it, expecting military logs, ship schematics, maybe comm transcripts. What I found were maps, not star charts, not invasion plans, transit routes. They're moving through us, Redden said, barely above a whisper. They're already here. I frowned. You're saying Earth has ships inside Accord territory? He laughed, a short, bitter bark. No, I'm saying Earth never left that warship you saw. It wasn't first contact. It was the first time we saw them react. He slammed a hand down on the table, scattering pages. We were too late. They've been watching us for decades, maybe centuries. That ship wasn't a warning, it was a leash. Snap. My mouth Went dry, that's impossible. We've had deep space monitoring for over 800 years. Nothing gets in without what he snapped. Permission clearance, a radio wave. That's our arrogance talking. You think they're using our tech, our rules? No. He leaned in close, eyes bloodshot, voice shaking. They're ghosts. They don't move with engines. They slip. They cut space open like it's paper. You don't detect them. You notice what's missing after they've passed. He showed me a satellite image, a cargo route across the Devrian cluster. 6 stations, regular hauler traffic, functional. Then the next image, silence, all 6 offline. No explosion, no energy spike, just blankness. You think pirates did that? He asked. You think that's sabotage? I didn't answer because I knew this wasn't war. This was a racer. But when I returned to Accord space, I couldn't sleep, couldn't think. Every shadow on the station felt deeper. Every silence too long. I found myself listening for that voice, that same cold, male human voice that had spoken from the warship. Even in dreams I heard it. You've crossed the line. The council labeled Rain a madman. Of course his theories were sealed, his maps discredited. The official story was that he had suffered a psychological collapse after witnessing a rogue anomaly. But his words stuck. They don't need a fleet to conquer us. They just need time. And he was right. Because a week after my return, we intercepted an emergency signal from the Rathari system, a trading hub near the edge of controlled territory. 50,000 residents, major diplomatic center too. Accord embassies gone, not attacked, not bombed, just missing, no debris, no evacuation logs, just a static fill broadcast from one of the outer sensors. Audio only. We saw them, God help us. They didn't look angry, just disappointed. That's what shattered the illusion, not the destruction, the emotion. Disappointment, like a parent looking down at a child who had broken something irreplaceable. That same day, the Accord convened a closed emergency session. I wasn't invited. No one was outside the inner council, but rumors spread like blood in water, whispers of Operation Glass Tomb. A plan, a last resort. They were actually considering it, a preemptive strike on Earth. I met with Ryland again, this time in secret. She looked older, more tired. Her uniform didn't fit right anymore, like it belonged to a version of herself she'd outlived. They're going to do it, she said. They're going to strike the cradle. I shook my head. They'll start a war we can't finish. They think we already have. She paused, then slid something across the table, a data chip. I frowned. What's this? Her voice dropped to a whisper. Intercepted human signal. Not from Earth, from inside Accord territory. You want to hear it? I plugged it into my portable console. Static, then a faint hum, then a voice. Male, firm, clear. Not the warship. Someone else. Begin extraction. No. Survivors wipe the record. Phase 3 initiates in 8 cycles. I looked up. Ryland just stared at the table. Not reacting to us, she said. They're cleaning up. What is Phase 3? She didn't answer, didn't have to. Because in that moment I understood something that chilled me more than the warship ever did. Earth hadn't launched an invasion. They'd launched a test, and we failed. I left that meeting with a weight I couldn't name. My hands shook. My thoughts looped like static. I needed proof, something undeniable. So I did what no one else dared. I returned to the wreckage of the Calthurian, the ship was still floating. In restricted space, monitored by drones off limits to all personnel. I faked my credentials, hijacked a salvage pod, and docked in the remains of the lower deck, cold, silent, haunted. I moved through the wreckage, suits flickering across blackened walls. Scars of that single blast still marred. Everything, melted corridors, crushed steel, vaporized bulkheads, and there, in what remained of the communications chamber, I found it, a black box, undamaged, hidden under a collapsed beam. I extracted it, plugged it into my portable system, and activated the final recorded audio before the destruction. Not a council log, not a crew broadcast. A voice, his voice, the human warship. Observation complete, target vessel. Demonstrated hostility, response. Executed at minimal force, no further action required, awaiting confirmation from Sovereign Authority Earth Command. The file time stamp. 3 days before the Calthurian ever fired a warning shot. That's when my blood froze. They knew we were coming, not just Earth, all of us, and they hadn't panicked, they hadn't scrambled, they'd waited. I left the wreckage with the black box, hidden in a radiation-safe compartment. I transmitted the file to Ryland through a secure relay. Her response came in a single line of text: "We're not preparing for war, we're already inside the kill box." The next day she vanished, her records deleted, her station reassigned. No official trace, just a message on a dead frequency. They warned us, we didn't listen. Now we die in silence. I no longer trust the Accord, not the Council, not the commands, not the systems. The people in charge are clinging to an illusion of control, too proud to admit the obvious. We are outmatched, not just in technology, not just in strategy and understanding. We thought Earth would join the galaxy. Instead, they looked at what we were, what we stood for, and they chose to stand alone. They built their silence into a weapon. And now that weapon moves among us. The galaxy's voice didn't just die, it was replaced with something colder, smarter, and deeply, terrifyingly human. He went by the name Marcus Hale, but that wasn't his real name. Of that I was certain. His face looked human enough, eyes like cooled steel, expression unreadable. He walked with the quiet confidence of a man who never questioned his place in the world. No wasted movement, no idle breath, the kind of stillness that screamed predator. I met him in the underlevels of Talth Station, a hub that serviced trade ships and black market couriers in the unaligned zones, a place where the Accord's eye blinked often conveniently. That night I wasn't on official business. I wasn't wearing a uniform or carrying ID. I came alone as instructed. I found him sitting in a booth made of carbon-reinforced alloy, facing away from the entrance, sipping something that smelled like raw fuel. He didn't look up as I approached. "You're early," he said. His accent was faint, earth-based, but polished, controlled. I sat across from him, trying to ignore the way my instincts screamed. Every part of me felt exposed. "I wasn't sure you'd show." He finally met my gaze. "I wouldn't miss this," he said. "Not often. I get to speak with someone who's seen one of our warships up close." I didn't know how to respond to that. The casualness of it, like he'd said, weather instead of warship. "I came for answers," I said, voice low. Marcus leaned back. "No, you came for hope, but you already know that's a dead currency." I studied him. No fear, no bluster, just calm dominance, everything about him Felt wrong, not alien but sharper, like a mirror with the edges still razor sharp. You're not here on behalf of Earth's government, I said carefully. He smiled. There is no Earth government, not anymore. That hit like a punch. What do you mean? I mean exactly what I said. There are nations, yes, flags, presidents, but they're all noise. Theater. Earth is governed by something far older now, something you don't understand. He leaned forward, voice dropping. Sovereign authority, Earth command. SAAC, we don't make announcements, we don't do diplomacy, we decide. I felt cold. Decide what? Marcus' smile vanished. Who lives, who doesn't, who remembers, who disappears. For a moment neither of us spoke. The den of the station faded into the background. I finally found the nerve to ask, how long have you been among us? He gave a small shrug. Longer than you'd believe, long enough to watch the accord rot from the inside. My stomach turned. You're spying. No, he said, spying implies we care. What you're planning, we don't. We observe. Occasionally we intervene when your incompetence threatens the equilibrium. Equilibrium. Marcus nodded slowly. You think Earth fears you, that we're outnumbered, outgunned, alone. The truth is simpler. You're not a threat. You're a noise we tolerate. I slammed my hand on the table. You wiped out Rethari system, 50,000 lives. His gaze didn't flinch. 50,000 who were coordinating with anti-Earth intelligence. They were warned, they crossed a line, and they were removed. Just like that, no remorse, no ceremony. Just cause and effect. I could barely speak. You call that justice? No, he said flatly. I call it balance. You gave us war first, not with guns but with arrogance. You walked into our system like you were gods. You aimed weapons at our planet. You wanted to tame us. His voice dropped into ice. You don't tame Earth. You survive it. I don't remember leaving the booth. I remember his words echoing as I staggered through the lower corridor. Bile rising in my throat. We don't make announcements, we decide. He hadn't threatened me. He didn't have to. It was already done. I left Talv Station that night a different man. My illusions shattered. The accord, a fragile shell. Our peace a lie. Our superiority a delusion. Earth wasn't rising to meet the galaxy. It was beneath it, studying the cracks in the foundation. And now it had its hand on the lever. Back in accord, I tried to report the meeting. I contacted 6 officials. 3 denied knowing me. 2 had their credentials revoked within a day. The 6th dead. Shuttle explosion ruled an engineering fault. My report was erased. My access suspended. I was being buried alive, but I wasn't done. I took what I had: audio logs, fragments of Earth's comms tech, black box data, Ryland's message, Marcus' name, and handed it to the only person left I trusted. The Dren. He was a mercenary turned analyst, once exiled from the council for exposing corruption during the Ulf scandal. Cynical, brilliant, and deeply paranoid. Perfect. He met me in a forgotten observatory, orbiting a dead planet. No guards, no trackers. Just him, a bottle of expired ration, whiskey, and a hollow table humming with classified networks. I dropped everything on the table. He listened, watched, drank, then finally said, "So, the humans finally started cleaning house? That's all you have to say?" He scratched at his grizzled chin. "What else is there? We poked a nest. We Didn't understand. Now the hive's awake. The real question is. He leaned closer. How many of them are? Already in the room with us. He wasn't joking. He began showing me flagged patterns in trade logs, gaps in diplomatic travel, tech trails that didn't match any. Registered Accord origin. The Accord is being penetrated, he said, not by an invasion force, not by soldiers, by operators, quiet ones like Hale trained to blend in, to map influence, eliminate. Why? Because they're not here to fight us, they're here to see if we're worth keeping. That hit me harder than any weapon ever could. Worth keeping. The leaned back. Think about it. They've had the capability to wipe us for decades, but they haven't. You said it yourself. They warn first. They act only when provoked. This isn't conquest. This is evaluation. They're studying how we handle power, chaos, fear, maybe even morality. My throat was dry, and if we fail the test, thorax didn't blink. They erased the whole file. So here I sit now, staring at a screen, transmitting this final report into every unsecured channel I can find. A desperate act, maybe pointless, maybe too late. I want the galaxy to know. Earth isn't coming. They're already here, and they're not waiting for an invitation. They're listening, watching, deciding sovereign authority. Earth Command doesn't ask for permission. They don't write treaties. They don't join councils. They let you speak so they can decide if you're worth hearing. Again, the warship wasn't the beginning. It was a punctuation mark. And we were already part of the sentence. We just didn't know it. They called it Project Pale Ghost, off the books, unauthorized, entirely suicidal. It was a whisper passed between command outcasts and ex-military ghosts, people like me, people who had stared into the abyss of Earth's war machines and walked away hollow. The official Accord stance was that no reconnaissance flights were to enter the Sol system, and certainly not land on anything inside it, especially not the moon. But what made Project Pale Ghost more than just another suicidal rumor was a data leak, a snapshot, one image pulled from an old probe launched before the Accord had ever known Earth existed. A crater on the far side of Earth's moon, but not just rock, symmetry, clean lines, artificial angles buried beneath the dust and silence was structure, not human-made in appearance, not primitive, not crude, but unmistakably engineered, hidden under 200 meters of regolith and time. And someone had left a beacon. It pulsed once every 7 hours, barely enough to register on deep space comms, but enough to send a message, active, listening, logged. That last word chilled me the most. Logged. Whatever was under the surface of Earth's moon wasn't dead tech, it was observing. I didn't go alone. You don't take on something like this solo unless you're desperate or insane or both. There were 4 of us. Narek, a former pilot who'd flown deep cover raids during the Varn collapse, half his skull replaced with alloy eyes that could see light. We didn't even have words for ever. Demolition specialist, quiet, steady hands. Rumor was he once defused a planet killer warhead while bleeding out from a gut wound. Yulo, a defector from the Council's Cyber Intelligence Corps. She could break a military firewall with a spoon and an old wire. And then there was me, the broken diplomat who had once stood on the Calthurian's bridge and watched his future die in fire. We called ourselves the Pale Team, more as a joke than anything else. There was nothing Official, nothing coordinated, just a ship too old to track and 4 people. Too haunted to sleep at night. We launched from a dead zone beyond Accord. Sensors cut all live transmissions and coasted dark into the Sol system. The moment we crossed the helipause, every system on our ship flickered, knack. Cursed, something scanning us, but nothing pinged, no signal, no retaliation, just a presence. We were being watched, not like prey, more like data. It took us 18 hours to reach Earth's orbit, and there she was, the cradle. Blue, cloud-wrapped, beautiful in the most terrifying way imaginable. We didn't get close. The orders were clear: go to the moon, stay off Earth. We didn't need a second reminder. Just being this close made our skin crawl. We slingshotted into the moon's shadow side, cutting engines, moving. Silence, no lights, no beacons, ghost mode. Then we saw the crater. It wasn't natural, perfect circular symmetry. Smooth as glass, and at its heart, a faint geometric shape, a hexagonal hatch, half buried in lunar dust. Yulo was the first to speak. That's not human. Evan shrugged. Doesn't mean it's not theirs. We landed 30 m from the edge. The dust didn't move right. No gravity flutter, just settled stillness. Like the moon itself was holding its breath. Nar and I descended into the crater. First, the hatch was sealed. No ports, no panels, but it radiated faint heat. Impossible in the lunar cold. Yulo scanned it. This thing's not metal, it's something else. Can you breach it? I asked. She gave me a grim look. Give me 10 minutes or a eulogy. Ever helped her rig a silent charge? One designed to slice more than blast. While we waited, I stood at the edge of the hatch staring at it. It felt old, not just ancient, but watchful. Then the hatch opened, not from the charge, from the inside. Yulo hadn't even touched the detonator. We stepped back, weapons drawn. The soundless seal slid away like paper, revealing a narrow tunnel spiraling downward in perfect symmetry. No lights, no sounds, just a single glyph above the passage. Entry authorized, one only. The others turned to me. Narek muttered, looks like it wants you. I didn't argue. I entered alone. The passage curved downward, smooth and seamless. No seams, no vibration. It was like walking into a thought made solid. The deeper I went, the more I felt it, something in my head, like someone gently tapping at the edges of my memory. Then came the voice. Mail come. Familiar. You were present at first contact. This unit recognizes you. I stopped cold. Who are you? I am Interface Unit 4 Station. Moon Relay Observation Node. A pause. Earth designated the listening tomb. I shivered. How long have you been here? This node has observed 1,273 galactic cycles, awaiting directive. Validation. That's over 13,000 years, older than the Accord, older than almost every species in the Council, and yet this thing had been sitting in Earth's moon, watching, listening, logging. What is your purpose? I asked. To evaluate emergent species for galactic integration potential. Conclusion: Earth is unsuitable for integration. My stomach twisted. Why? Silent. Then Earth displays traits incompatible with Accord doctrine. Autonomy, unpredictability, emotional volatility, high risk of systemic disruption. Therefore observe only. Do not engage. Allow Earth to evolve along independent path. If approached aggressively by external actors, initiate defense. Directive, I froze. This wasn't Earth's creation. This wasn't even human. You're not one of them, I whispered. Correct. Origin, unnamed precursor race. Directive assumed by local authority. Sovereign authority, Earth command. It hit me like a tidal wave. Essie hadn't built the listening tomb. They'd inherited it. They found it, claimed it, took over its purpose, then bent it into something that suited them. Earth wasn't just surviving, they were rising from the bones of a forgotten god. What is your current status? I asked. Directive active. Observation. Concluded, judgment rendered, contact denied, containment authorized. I staggered backward, judgment rendered. They weren't just watching us now, they had made their decision. I climbed back up to the surface. Shaking lungs tight, the others looked at me, eyes questioning. What's down there? Yulo asked. Not human, I said. Softly, not originally. Narc blinked. Then who? It doesn't matter. They've taken it, made it theirs, and they've made their judgment. Ever asked the question? We were all thinking, what's that judgment? I didn't speak for a moment. Then I looked up at the stars and answered with the only word that felt true. Containment. The plan was called Silent Veil. I found the name scribbled on a physical tablet, the kind you only use when you don't want the network to know you're breathing. It was hidden inside a vault buried 3 km beneath the Accord's core research station on the artificial world of Selene Prime. And the name wasn't even the worst part. It was what came after it. Project Silent Veil, initiate upon breach of Earth origin containment perimeter. Objective, nullify soul. Not Earth, not its ships, not its leaders, the entire system. It wasn't war, it was isolation through annihilation. I wasn't supposed to be there. The council had revoked my clearance months ago, ever since I started speaking openly about the listening tomb and the human warship. But you learn how to get around things when you're no longer afraid of consequences. I stole a salvage cruise ID, blackmailed a station clerk who owed favors to a dead spy, and rode a maintenance skiff through the back end cargo channels into Selene Prime's underbelly. The place smelled like ammonia and copper. Thousands of drones zipped through vertical tunnels, scanning inventory, shuttling components. The deeper I went, the more things changed, from commercial operations to defense-grade research. Labs, locked doors, genetic scanners, anti-personnel turrets hanging from ceilings like metal spiders. Eventually, I found Director Mayan. She wasn't military. She didn't wear a uniform or carry a weapon, just a pale green coat and a tired look in her eyes. The kind that only comes from watching good plans die slowly. She saw me and didn't scream, didn't panic. She just sighed. I wondered how long it would take you to find this place. You knew I'd come. Of course, she said. You're the only idiot left who still thinks truth matters. I didn't bother responding. Instead, I dropped the chip from the listening tomb onto the table between us. The audio pulsed once. Judgment rendered, containment authorized. Her fingers twitched, so she knew. You've heard it, I said. I've heard worse, she muttered, then tapped her console. A wall lit up with 3D projections, Earth's orbital layout, hypothetical fleet routes, and something else. The containment lattice grid, 12 points of impact, interlocking resonance waves. I stared at it. You're building a prison. She nodded. We don't want to destroy Earth. We just want to wall it off, fold. Space around the system, collapse the entrance points, keep them in there. Cradle forever. My voice cracked. That'll cause a field quake across 4 sectors. It'll swallow 3 colonies. Millions will be relocated, she interrupted, temporarily. You're insane. No, she said, voice flat. We're cornered. She showed me the numbers because of course she did. People like her always do. They think showing you data makes murder sound reasonable. This isn't just about Earth's fleet or their command structure. It's about how fast they're spreading, how deep. She pulled up charts, surveillance clips, asset loss reports. In the last 6 months alone, 23 deep space trade routes have gone silent, 16 recon vessels vanished. And do you know what we recovered from the last site? She tapped a button, a static-filled video flickered onto the screen, a human face, male expression, calm, speaking slowly. You were warned, now you're being forgotten. The feed cut to black. That wasn't a drone, she whispered. That was a person. We ran facial structure analysis. He's not even enhanced, just efficient. I closed my eyes. They're everywhere, aren't they? She nodded. They don't need armies. They've built network inside ours, quiet, fast, clinical. We don't even see the blade until our throat's gone. I looked at the silent veil schematic. Again, the 12 lattice points weren't just theoretical. They were preloaded. Coordinates already locked, weapons already fueled. Who else knows? I asked. Only 3 on the council, she said. The rest, they want to believe Earth is just lashing out a tantrum, something we can contain with enough warnings and treaties. And what do you believe? I asked. She hesitated, then said the quiet part aloud. I believe Earth is doing what any cornered species would do. They looked at the stars and realized the galaxy wasn't safe, so they prepared, and this is our response. She turned toward the grid. I'm not trying to win, she said. I'm trying to survive. I left the vault without permission. Didn't care. No one tried to stop me. Maybe they all knew it was too late. Back in my quarters, I transmitted the silent veil data to 3 nodes, encrypted, offline, routed through defunct networks that no longer existed. On the books, it wouldn't stop the plan. But maybe someone would listen. That same night, I received a private message, unmarked, untraceable, no audio, just 1 line. You light a match in a room full of fuel, and you wonder why it burns. The source unclear, the signature Marcus Hale. 2 days later, the first incident happened. A starry reach, a remote outpost known for mining iridium. Quiet, isolated, defenseless. It went dark. No weapons fired, no explosion, just gone. Like the system had been plucked from the map. When the council demanded explanations, Director Mayan called it a solar flare. She lied. I know because I've seen the final signal burst from the station, a security camera, blurry, rattling. In the background, a single figure standing at the docking bay. Not armored, not disguised, just a man, black, holding nothing, staring up at the camera. Then containment is mutual. Cut to black. Here's what terrifies me most. We keep calling Earth primitive, emotional, reckless, but what if none of that's true anymore? What if that was their past, and now we're facing something post-human? Not gods, not machines, just will, a species that stopped asking for a seat at the table and started flipping the table over when no one listened. They don't want to rule the galaxy. They want to end the conversation, and we handed them the microphone. The galaxy doesn't need a war. It already lost. The moment we fired on that first warship, the moment we aimed diplomacy like a weapon, the moment we assumed Earth was behind, that was the real defeat. Not in space, not in fire, but in understanding. Because you can't negotiate with something that's already judged you unworthy of speech. You can't reason with silence, and you sure as hell can't contain what's already inside your walls. They activated the lattice at 400 standard galactic time, 12 ships, 12 synchronized detonations, enough quantum destabilization to seal off the entire Sol system like a tomb. The hope wasn't victory. No one believed in that anymore. The hope was silence. Permanent, unreachable silence. A galaxy without Earth. A future safe from the unpredictable, from the uncontainable. From them. I was there, not in the command center. They didn't want me near that, but in the observation deck aboard the Varnal. Accordance, one of the ships, coordinating the containment field. From our position, Earth was nothing but a tiny blue jewel surrounded by empty dark. You'd never guess the most feared species in the galaxy lived there. You'd never guess they were already watching us, but they were the moment the first node activated. It began a pulse, not from Earth, not from any known structure, but from the lattice itself. It answered. Director Mayan's face went pale before the first message even arrived. The containment field lit up across the grid, each node emitting the exact same vibration. Then, as if someone pressed play on a universal speaker, a voice came through every single Accord vessel, across every channel. Mail come. Familiar, we warned you. Silence followed, not a transmission, not a conversation, a verdict. I stood frozen, heart pounding, while officers around me scrambled, shouting into headsets, checking containment levels. Some of them thought it was a bluff, others were already backing away from their stations. Then the stars began to vanish, not explode, not dim, vanish, light cut off. Entire sectors blinked out like embers beneath a storm. Accords, military satellites, deep space scanning, towers gone, no noise, no radiation. Spike, just blackness. That's when we understood the lattice hadn't trapped Earth. It had triggered a defense, something buried, something waiting inside the void around their system, and we just unlocked it. The Varnell accordance shuddered, lights flickered, atmosphere pressure dropped 2 degrees in under 3 seconds. Not a system failure, a response. Mayan's voice came over the shipwide broadcast, tight with barely contained fear. Shut it down, all laddies, nodes full. Deactivation now. Too late. A second pulse swept through the ships, and the real message began. This wasn't a warning, it was a recording, a message meant to be played only if we tried to cage them. The face appeared on every screen. Not a military leader, not a politician. A man, middle-aged, weathered. He wore no insignia. His voice was patient, almost kind. If you're hearing this, you've tried to trap us. That was your last mistake. He looked straight into the camera like he was looking at each of us personally. You feared what we might become. You feared what we already were. You thought containment would protect you. He leaned forward, but we don't escape cages. We build them. Behind him, the backdrop shifted. Not Earth, not any place. We recognized some black structure, impossible to scale, glowing faintly. with lines that didn't follow any geometry the mind could rest on. He kept speaking. We understood the galaxy the moment we listened to it. You mistake our silence for passivity, but we were always preparing while you argued over seats and treaties and empires. We studied something else. Finality. You don't need to conquer the stars to own them. You just need to make sure no one else can use them. He paused just for a second, and that pause was colder than any weapon. Your weapons are clever, your science is impressive, but you built it all from the assumption that every species wants peace. We don't. We want clarity. The feed didn't end. It expanded. Dozens of screens, dozens of human faces, men, women, young, old, all speaking in unison. You brought war to Earth once. You called it diplomacy. Now we bring truth to you. The stars continued to go dark one by one. The outer accord systems began reporting total data collapse. Civilian ships lost navigation. Trade routes vanished. The galaxy was being erased. Not physically, not violently, but systematically. The Sol lattice had been a test key, and we turned it in the lock. Someone on the Varnell's bridge vomited. Another officer collapsed, shaking, whispering prayers. I couldn't move, because I realized what none of them did. The humans never built an empire. They built an exit, and when we tried to cage them, they shut the door behind them. The final part of the message played on every remaining screen, every surviving transmission node. We will not retaliate. We do not seek destruction. But you are no longer required. Your voice is removed from the table. Your systems will remain intact. Your people will live, but you will no longer be seen. You will no longer see us. Your galaxy ends here, and just like that, the stars were gone, not destroyed, withdrawn. When I woke up, we were adrift. The ship's lights were low, gravity restored only through local stabilizers. Communications dead. We tried to reestablish contact with nearby systems. Nothing, not even static. Silence. Across the galaxy, the same story played. Outposts still had air, still had light, still had power. But the network was severed. There were no more updates from Earth, no more sightings, no more threats, and no more hope. I don't know how long it's been now. Days, weeks, time feels slower. The stars are back, most of them at least. But some things changed. Their positions aren't quite the same. Deep space scans show anomalies we don't have names for. Like the map has been folded, like the galaxy has been moved. Some say Earth sealed itself away forever. Some say it ascended into another plane, using tech we can't even begin to name. But I know the truth. They're not gone. They're just done with us. The Accord has collapsed. The Council has fractured. Most factions blame each other. Some demand retaliation, though no one knows where to send it. Others are begging for a second chance, but Earth isn't listening. They never were. They were recording, waiting, and when the final test came, they passed. We failed. I spend most nights now staring at the sky, not looking for Earth, looking for what comes after, because if humans were the last species to rise, what did they become? What happens to a civilization that prepares for war, wins it, and then walks away? What do they dream of next? And when they finally look back at us, will they remember, or will we be nothing more than a footnote in a dead language? His name was Tavern Merrick. Once a decorated fleet commander in the Accord's Outer Systems Navy, tactician, a patriot, a man who once believed the Accord was the galaxy's highest ideal. Now he was its last. Whisper, he didn't wear a uniform anymore, didn't carry a flag, didn't serve anyone. He sat alone in a stolen interceptor ship no bigger than a passenger shuttle, drifting just beyond the edge of what used to be known as the Sol quarantine boundary, except now there was no boundary, just space still silent, watching. The stars here were wrong. They gleamed in the wrong places, like they'd been reassembled by hands that didn't care about old maps. Even his vessel's AI, once a confident, chatty voice, had stopped trying to measure the anomaly. There were no markers, no known coordinates, no sign of Earth, just directionless void humming faintly with something alive. Tavern had come here to ask a question no one else would, not to provoke, not to plead, but because deep down through all the lies and arrogance and war, there was one truth he couldn't escape. We never understood them, and maybe we never deserved to. The message had to be simple: no bluster, no titles, just truth. He activated his long-range beacon, tied it to the last known subspace frequency used during the Warship transmission, the one that spoke only when humans had decided to speak first. He wasn't sure if it would work, but if they were listening, they'd know. He took a deep breath and spoke. This is Tavern Merrick, former Accord Navy. I am alone. I am not here to fight. I know what we did. I know what we tried, and I know what we lost. I am not asking for forgiveness. He paused, then leaned forward. I'm asking one thing. What are you now? Then he shut the beacon off and waited. For 6 hours there was nothing. No pulse, no signal, no retaliation. Just the faint hum of the reactor and the endless drift of the void. Tavern didn't expect an answer, he thought. Maybe that was his punishment, to speak a question into an empty galaxy and be forgotten for it. But on the 7th hour the stars shifted. Not fast, not violently, just enough to make the universe tilt. Then came the voice, not from a speaker, not from a screen, from inside the ship, as if the air had learned to speak. It was calm, familiar, not angry, not welcoming, just steady. You ask what we are what happens next. Tavern held still. He knew better than to speak. You didn't interrupt gods when they finally answered. We are not your enemy, not anymore. You were never capable of that role. You were our mirror. We needed to see what we could become if we listened too long. He swallowed hard. Then why didn't you destroy us? Silent. Then because extinction is simple. We evolved past it. You built empires. We built memory. You built doctrine. We built judgment. You needed laws. We needed limits. Another pause. Longer. He waited. We watched you try to trap us. We knew you would. We let you, and now you've seen what we let sleep. That was the purpose. Taver leaned forward, whispering. Purpose for what? For departure. The stars shifted again, one by one. Faint glow appeared outside his ship. Not ships, not lights, structures. Massive, angular, almost invisible. Against the void, like something hiding between layers of reality, they hummed. Without vibration, pulsed without movement. He could barely look at them. Without his eyes watering, they weren't weapons, they were tools, and something was activating them. We are leaving. That voice again. You feared we would conquer your galaxy. We won't. We outgrew it. Tavern's hands trembled. Your Abandoning us. No, we are releasing you. Your galaxy is yours again, unguarded, unmeasured. You will remember us or you won't. It no longer matters. A sound filled the ship. Not a boom, not a screech, but a deep echoing note, like the vibration of a universe preparing to close its book, the void ahead. Fractured not like glass but like logic breaking, a fold formed, a tunnel of nothingness wrapped in starlight, and the structures began moving into it. Slowly, like kings marching into a tomb. They built themselves. Tava gasped, "You're leaving this universe? We have no use for repetition. You will remain, and your silence will protect you better than your weapons ever did." The final structure passed into the fold. Only one light remained, a small, floating prism of gold and black, just meters from Tavern's ship. It pulsed. "Once we leave behind, no dominion, no rule, no warning, only this." The prism beamed a data stream into his ship. It was massive. It held no weapons, no blueprints, no threats, just one single file. "This is your memory of us, use it well." And then silence. The fold closed, the structures were gone, the stars settled, and the galaxy felt empty, not wounded, not broken, just freed. Tavern stared into the dark, tears running down his face. He was alone. But he had witnessed it, he had asked the question, and Earth, whatever it had become, had answered. He returned to Accord space 5 weeks later. The lattice had fallen. The council was gone, but people still lived, planets still turned, and now there was a story, not of war, but of warning. He handed them the file, the last message, the final glimpse. It contained everything Earth had left behind. Their history, their reasons, their restraint, and their final act to walk away. And as Tavern stepped down from the shuttle, he spoke one last sentence into the quiet air of the new world they would have to build. They didn't destroy us. They didn't enslave us. They saw what we were, and they left so we could decide what to become without them. The galaxy's voice didn't die that day. It was silenced until it learned how to